I'm Zach. I've been with the Streak Success team for just shy of 3 years now, and moderating the class is my colleague Jeremy Frazier. And today we'll be talking about lead imports and automation. So, really, how you can get your leads and data into Streak quickly and efficiently. Um, the agenda for today's class, first off, we'll be starting out with an import demo, and then we'll move on to the integrations and automations portion of the class. First, we'll be walking through how to automate submissions from Google Form and Typeform, which are two of the form types that we have available natively in Streak. And then we'll move on to the Gmail incoming message trigger, and we'll cover that in a bit more detail once we get there. And then we'll finish things off by just going over any remaining questions that you all have. So why are we talking about this? Why is this important? The cleaner your data is, the easier it will be for you to manage in Streak. And in addition to clean data, the more data you have in Streak will just allow for easier filtering and also reporting that you can build in Streak within through the use of creating save views or within our reports dashboard connected to each pipeline. And being able to import and also automate leads in your Streak pipeline is going to save you time. And I feel like through the teams that I have worked with and through the teams that Jeremy has begun working with, once you begin automating steps within your process, it kind of is a trickle down effect, and you want to just automate more and more steps within your process. So, um, without further ado, let's get started. When you are importing into a pipeline, there's a few different ways you can access the Streak importer. So I have a few screenshots here. This large screenshot kind of in the middle left-hand side of my screen is just a blank pipeline right now. You've just created your first pipeline. There's currently no data in there. You have some stages. So you can access the importer in two different ways. In the upper right-hand corner of your screen, there is a vertical three-dot icon where a lot of important information and tools are going to live. One of those being the importer. In addition to the three-dot icon, just to the right of that is a circular plus sign that you can use to um, access the importer as well. And I have a few screenshots that we'll get to in just a moment. But when it comes to importing, the first step that you're going to want to do is set up your pipeline. You need to have a pipeline created before you can actually import your data into Streak. And then once your pipeline is built, you'll want to set up your columns. So whatever information that you're tracking within your existing data set will be important for you to create similar columns in your Streak pipeline. And so down below, I have just a screenshot of a Google Sheet for just some sample information that one within a sales use case might be tracking. We have company name, some contact information like first name, last name, email address, phone number, and then we have location, which could be the location of that business, as well as company size and industry. And then once you have your pipeline set up and those columns built out, you are ready to import your data. So now let's just walk through a live example of what this would look like. So here I am in my sales pipeline. If you do not have a pipeline yet created, there's two ways you can go about building those. You can hit this plus sign right here for a new pipeline, and there's also a large button in the upper left-hand corner where you can create a pipeline. If you select this, you'll be able to choose from a number of templated pipelines that you have access to, or you can just choose a custom pipeline and build your own from scratch, where you can designate the stages within your process, as well as the fields or columns that you can use to track information. Since I already have a pipeline created, we can go about the import process. So again, three-dot icon right here, and you can come over to import, or you can select this plus sign right here and choose to import your data, which will pull up this import module right here. You can import from a number of different files. We have Google Sheets as well as CSV or an Excel file. And one other important thing to note are the advanced settings, which you can open up by selecting this drop-down arrow right here. We have them all toggled on by default based on what we think is the most useful and what our customer base uses most often. So we have these all turned on, but you can adjust these as needed based on the type of information that you're importing. So just to walk through these really briefly, we have automatic email sharing. So if you are importing that contact information or an email address for an individual that you want to track throughout your pipeline, we want to have automatic email sharing turned on, which automatically scans your inbox as well as any other streak members on your team to pull those email threads in to the box connected to that specific contact that you're tracking. We also have update existing boxes. When you're importing, it's really important to hopefully avoid any duplicates. So with this toggled on, we're going to search for an existing box that might already exist within your pipeline with the exact same name. And if that duplicate box is found, we'll update it with new information from your data set. Of course, if you don't really care about duplicates or your intention is to track duplicates in your pipeline, you can always toggle this off. And then the last option, create missing items. This is primarily relevant for stages and columns within your pipeline, primarily drop down and tag columns. So if you're importing data into a specific stage and maybe that stage doesn't exist yet or you forgot to add it during the creation of your pipeline, we can easily create missing stages and also drop down or tag values that you might be tracking. So I'm going to go ahead and leave these toggled for this example, and then we can move forward with the import demo. I selected Google Sheets, so I'll be able to select which file I want to import. I'm going to select the sales demo right here. And then it will take you back to your pipeline and prepare for import. The header row is going to be selected by default, so we're going to leave that checked, and then we can move forward with the import. On the left-hand side, we see all of the columns within our data set. So company name, first name, last name, all of those columns that we're tracking. In the middle, we have just a few rows of sample data. And then on the right-hand side, we have our pipeline columns. So these are the columns that currently exist in our streak pipeline. And we do our best to auto map the columns from our data set to the columns in our pipeline. However, it's always good and best practice to double check to ensure that they're mapped correctly. As example here, company name is what I want to track as the unique identifier or the box within my pipeline. So I'm going to adjust this from company name to box name right here. And then if we slowly scroll down, we can see the contact information is already mapped to our contact fields, first name, last name, email, and phone number. And then in addition to that, we have those custom columns that we were tracking. So location, company size, industry, lead source, and then we have the stages mapped as well. If there is ever an instance where you're importing data and you forgot to add a column to your pipeline when you were originally creating it, you don't have to exit out of the entire import, go back to your pipeline, create the column, and then restart the entire import process. You can just select this option right here and hit add new, and you can give the column a name and also select what type of column it is. So we have a few different options right here that you can choose from. Since everything is mapped and ready to go, I can hit next in the bottom right-hand corner. This will take us to the final portion of the import. If there are any errors or issues, they will appear here, but it looks like we're good to go. So we can go ahead and finalize this import. You'll also be presented with an import summary, just letting you know the number of new boxes and contacts that will be created, as well as existing boxes and organizations that will be created or updated. Once you hit start import, you'll see a progress mole down in the bottom right-hand corner of your screen. And we can see I didn't have too many boxes that were imported. I only had 21. So this imported fairly quickly. Depending on the size of your data set will really determine the amount of time it takes to import data, but that really only took a few seconds to import that data. You should also receive an email as well, letting you know once your import is complete. And we can scroll through all of this data here and see that everything is populated and contacts were created as well. That kind of wraps up the import portion of the class today. So I'll pause, and Jeremy, if there's any questions or anything that you think would be useful to go over live, feel free to shout that out now.
No, no questions in the chat so far. So I think we'd be good to kind of move on, unless someone has something specific they would like to ask now. So
Awesome, sounds good. Yeah, I'm happy to move forward, and if there's anything that we need to cover towards the end of the class, happy to come back to those. So moving forward, we have how to set up a Google form or a Typeform integration within your Streak pipeline. So Google Form and Typeform are the two form types that we have natively available to you. Within Streak, if you're on our Pro Plus plan or higher. I kind of have a GIF here in the middle of the screen just walking you through how you can go about setting this up, but I'll go ahead and walk through this live as well. So a lot of the times people have Google Forms or Typeforms that they either have hosted on their websites or that they send out to clients or leads. And we want to be able to get those leads and all of that data into Streak uh, as quickly as possible and really automate that process to avoid you having to import every single time or manually add these leads to Streak. So I'm going to go ahead and switch back over to my pipeline and we can walk through how you can set this up. So again, you're going to need to make sure you have a pipeline already created. The sales pipeline will be a perfect example that we can use. And then step two, you're going to need to make sure that you have your Google form or Typeform already built out and active so that we can set this up. Integrations and automations are going to live in the top right-hand corner within the three dot icon. And then it's right above the import option. We have integrations and automations. There's a few different ways you can access this. There's a lot of information here. We have our built-in templated automations that you can select from based on what we think you might want. If you're not entirely sure what is possible or what's available to you, you can view these folders right here, and you can see capture from forms is one of those folders that is available. You can also come down here to create native integrations from scratch in order to see all of the triggers and actions that you have at your disposal. We can just go to create from forms, and then you can see we have capture from Typeform submissions as well as capture from Google Form submissions. Below these, you'll also see a little button here that says whether or not they are available natively or whether you need Zapier to set these up. So as you can see, we have a few that are available natively. Those are the Typeform and Google Form submissions. If we come down to create native integrations from scratch, you're able to build these directly from scratch. So if I hit add trigger, you can see all of the available triggers that you have, and Google and Google Form submitted is the one that we're going to be building today. And like I mentioned earlier, you want to make sure that your form is active and live before we set this up so that you are able to, one, connect to your Google Form account. Mine's already connected. And then two, pick that form so that you can integrate it into your pipeline so that whenever it's filled out, you have a box or a row created in your pipeline, as well as the column information that's going to be filled out. So I'm going to choose this sales demo Google form, and you'll be able to see all of the questions within that Google form, as well as previous submissions that you have received to that form. This is just sample data from past times that this form has been filled out, and you know that it's sample data because it's shown in gray, and you can also sift through sample data up here. So you can see this was filled out 18 hours ago. This was filled out 3 months ago. You can see how many times it's been filled out. Once you have the Google form and trigger set up, we can come down here towards the bottom right to add a step. And what we want to do is whenever this form is filled out, we want to create a box and we want to create a contact. So I'm going to select Streak as the action step and create a box. In addition to creating a box, we also want to add a contact. So I'm going to hit add step again, Streak, and add contact box. Similar to when we were importing our data, you're really just mapping the information from the form to the columns within the pipeline. So depending on what it is you're tracking, you'll just want to map these form submissions or these answers to the columns within your pipeline. So Similar to when we were importing, I wanted to track company name as the name or the box name in my pipeline. So if I double click into this cell and I select from Google Form, I have all of the questions within my form right here. And I'm going to want company name to be inputted as the box name, and we can see the sample data is pulled right here. You can also select which stage you want these leads to go into. So if it's a new lead, I want it going into the first stage in my pipeline, which is the lead stage. I want to map the notes within this Google form to the notes column. And then you can also designate who it's going to be assigned to. So here you can see everyone on your team that has access to this specific pipeline, and you can choose maybe a specific sales rep that you want to be assigned to a pipeline, or you can round robin these different leads to a number of different users on your team. I'm just going to leave this blank for right now. And if you hit show more, you're able to access all of the other custom columns within your pipeline as well. So I'm just going to drag down a few to show you how you can map these. So I want to map bean types, I want to map industry, and we'll say I also want to map location. So similarly to how I mapped this information, you'll just double click in the empty cell, choose where that data is coming from. So bean types, I will map to bean types. Industry will be mapped to industry, and the location will be mapped to the location column. So once you've mapped all of the questions within your form to the custom columns, you'll then want to map the contact information so that you're able to create a contact within the contacts and organizations column. So similarly to how I mapped the information above, I'm going to map first name to given name, last name to family name, and then I'm going to map that email address to the email column, and then phone number to the phone number column. And this is really pretty much good to go here. It's a one-time setup. It won't run retroactively, but it will run moving forward. So once I hit create, whenever this form is filled out, a new lead should be created in Street. So the last step here is to give this a name. So I could just title this Google Form, create box, and save this. Have a form right here that's pre-filled out. So if I mapped everything correctly and I hit submit, it should populate a box within this pipeline. And we can see that only took a few seconds for this lead to populate and the contact to be created. You can also navigate back to the three dot icon, integrations and automations. And you'll now see an additional tab up at the top where you can see all of the automations that you have created connected to this pipeline. If you open it up, you can see recent activity. So it ran successfully a few seconds ago. If there are any flow errors, they will appear here. You can edit the flow by selecting this pencil icon, or you can hit the three dot icon to show all of the logs. You can pause this flow, or you can even delete it. Going back to the slides, Jeremy, any questions on how to set up a Google Form or Typeform automation, or am I good to move forward with the last portion?
Yes, we have a few questions in the chat. Mark did ask, mails from the inboxes of all users who have access to that pipeline are tracked, or does that only affect new mails which are coming in after the initial import? So I think they're wondering, how does linking this Google form, where is it kind of pulling that data from, Mark, if I'm understanding your question? So that would be from anyone who filled out that initial entry form. He also had a question from our import settings. Does auto share email setting on import mean that after import, all existing mails from inboxes of all users are tracked? Or does that only affect those after the initial import? What the auto share emails setting means is you can turn that on for your own inbox so that any of your correspondence will be available for other members of your team. So that is on a more personal basis there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. So just going over that option when we were importing, what it's going to do is turn on this star toggle right here. You can turn it on manually on your end, but we added the option so that if you're importing a large number of contacts, you can have it turned on by default. So really what that does is if we hit this three dot icon, include all emails from entire teams. So if I have emails with this email address right here, gracerodriguez@example.com, it will automatically pull those email threads into this box, as well as any other email threads that people on my team might have with this specific email address. Of course, just because email threads are pulled into the box doesn't necessarily mean that you will have access to them, because maybe there's someone higher up on your team, maybe the CEO or someone else, that has email threads with Grace Allen, and they don't necessarily want those email threads shared. They might be pulled into the box, but they won't be visible to everyone unless that specific person actually approves access. So you can request access on a email thread by thread basis, or they can go over here to the share icon and turn on auto share my emails to pipeline, which basically is saying that I approve sharing access for all of my email threads. Hopefully that was more or less clear, but happy to cover any other questions after the call, or we can discuss further over email later today. But going ahead and moving forward to the last portion of this class is the Gmail incoming message trigger. So like I mentioned earlier, we only have Google Form and Typeform natively available on Streak, but there are many, many other form types out there. There is Jot Form, Cognito Form, Gravity Form, just to name a few. Maybe you have Facebook ads or forms on Facebook that you are using to collect leads. We still have an ability to gather those leads and create boxes and contacts within your Streak pipeline, even though they might not be a Google form or Typeform. And we can do that through this Gmail incoming message trigger that we have available on our Pro Plus plan or higher. So I'll just kind of walk through the steps on how you can set this up, and then we'll go through a demo live. So you'll want to make sure that you have an example email in your inbox, maybe someone that's filled out the form before, or maybe you just fill out the form yourself. And you need to make sure that you are receiving an email that contains the answers to that form submission in your inbox. So it might look something like the screenshot I have on the right-hand side. Arbutus Coffee interest form, where you're tracking company name, contact information, and then other information related to that company. You'll then want a way to filter your inbox for these specific emails. You don't want to create a box in your Streak pipeline every time you receive any random email. Maybe only the emails that are coming from or to a specific email address, or that have a specific subject line, like Arbutus Coffee interest form. And you can easily set up these filters by going to the Gmail search bar, which you can see if you're in Gmail towards the upper middle of your screen. And then there is an option, a search options button that you can select to create essentially the exact filter that you're looking for. So you can get as granular with this as you would like. Again, you can choose whether it's coming from or to a specific email address, whether it has a specific subject line, even if the email contains specific words that you want to filter for. So you might be asking, okay, I receive an email to my inbox. It creates a box, it adds a contact, great, but how do I actually get the information from that email thread to populate in the correct columns? We've recently added an AI response action step that allows us to parse the body of that email, so that if you want to return the company name, it just takes that company name and uses that to populate the box name. Or it just takes the email address and uses that email address to create a new contact within the pipeline. And we can do that by just following these steps. I'm just going to walk through these screenshots fairly quickly, and then we'll go through this live. So when you're adding an action step, you can select utilities, and then you'll want to go to the AI response action step. From there, you'll want to choose the input data. So where is the information coming from that you want to parse? And it is going to be the body of the email, because that's where the answers to that form submission live. And then from there, you'll just set up the AI response. So just as a quick example, the input data is this first cell towards the top. The prompt is what you're typing in just normal English, what you want the AI to return. And then the completion is the sample data from the form or the email that was filled out. And we know it's sample data again because it's shown in gray right here. So now we can walk through an example of how to set this up live. First, you're going to want to figure out what that filter is. And you can do so by using this search options button within Gmail just to search your inbox. And since my email is always going to be coming or always going to have a specific subject line, you're going to want to type that in. So I already have it pre-selected here. And then once you hit search, it's going to not only create that filter for you up top, but it will show you all of the emails that match that criteria within your inbox. So now that I have the filter set up, I'm just going to copy this line right here. And I'm going to go back to my pipeline and we can begin setting up the automation. So again, automations live in the upper right-hand corner, the three dot icon, integrations and automations. And then we can scroll down to create our native integrations from scratch where we can select our trigger and then add our action steps. So that trigger is going to be under Google, but it's not going to be Google form. It's going to be incoming message right here. And here you're able to see just sample data that you have from emails that you've received in your inbox. And we want to add a filter so that we're only searching for those specific emails that match that filter. Sometimes you kind of have to play around with it a bit to get the filter to show the sample data that you want. Let's just try this again. Google form, incoming message. There we go. So now we can see I received an email that matched this subject line 13 hours ago, and there's also a few from 3 months ago as well. So once I have the emails that I am wanting to filter for within my inbox, we can go ahead and add those AI response action steps so that we're able to parse the body of the email. And if you hit show more right here, you can see who the email is coming from, who the email is going to, that subject line, which is again the filter that we added. And we can also reference the body of that email. So if I double click here, we can see this is just an example form submission that I received as an email in my inbox. I'm going to go ahead and move forward to the AI response action step. So if I hit add step here and come down to utilities, we have this AI response step right here. And then there's 3 cells, the input data, the prompt, and then the completion, which is what the AI is returning. So the input data is going to be from the trigger, which is the incoming message. And then we're wanting to parse the body of that email, which is where all of that information lives that we want to populate into our streak pipeline. And the prompt, I'm only going to do a few examples here, but the prompt is just what you're typing in that you want the AI to return. So I'll say return company name. And then you'll wait just a few seconds and it should return the completion based on whatever it is you typed in. So when I look at the parse body, I can see the company name is Cool Cats Cafe, and that's what the completion returned. I'll walk through this once more. Add step, utilities, AI response. And then the input data is going to be what we're wanting to parse, which is the body of that email. The prompt is what we are typing in. So I'll say return email address so that I can use this to create the contact, and it returns scout@gmail.com. So you would essentially need to create an AI response action step for all of the information that you want to parse. So potentially the first name and the last name, the phone number, the location, the company size, the industry, anything that you want to add in order to populate the columns within your pipeline. A few more steps here that I'm going to add. So now that we've added the AI response action steps, we want to create that box. And I'm going to map the company name to the box name. So if I double click here, we're able to reference all of the steps above the most recent one that I added. So the company name was that first LLM completion. So I'm going to return the completion. And this should say Cool Cats Cafe. Then I'll walk through that once more with the contact action step. So I want to also add a contact to the box. And here are all of the contact fields. I want to be able to create a contact with that email address. So if I double click into the email cell, I know that the AI response action step that returned the email was the second one here. So I'm going to select that. And then I want to return the completion, which is that email address scout@gmail.com. And you would essentially do this again for all of the information that you are parsing within the body of the email. I'm just doing two as an example so we can save time. And then the last step that I like to add is just the ability to actually add that Gmail thread to the box. So if I come down here, add Gmail thread to box, once that box is created, the contact is added and the columns are populated with information. I then want to add the thread to the box. Last step here is to just give this a name. So I'll just say incoming message, and we can go ahead and create this. I have an email filled out right here just to send as an example. So if I send this to myself and it matches that filter, if I set everything up correctly, it should hopefully create a box in this pipeline. Again, you can navigate over here to the three dot icon, integrations and automations, and you can view the trigger here or the automation as a whole. You can edit the automation if you need to. Select the three dot icon to pause it, show the logs, delete it if you want. And since we're actually sending and receiving an email, it takes a tiny bit longer, but it still only took a matter of seconds for the box to populate and the contact to be added. So that concludes the class today. Would love to answer any questions that anyone has. Jeremy, any last minute questions I can answer for anyone?
Hey, Zach, it's actually me, Amy. I just hopped in at the end here.
Okay, sweet.
I think we're looking good in the chat. There was one question I wanted us to cover. Grant asked a question about automating emails based on a set day. For example, could you send an email to your contacts on the 15th of each month? And I don't believe our schedule trigger would be able to do this. I think the schedule trigger is only supportive to the exporter, but I thought it might be something to think about with the schedule exporter. I don't know if you've gotten that question, the schedule trigger.
Yeah, so like schedule an email to go out on a specific day.
Correct.
Yeah, with our new exporting features, we do have the ability to schedule exports, and I believe that schedule action will become available to our integrations and automations, but it is not launched and live for everyone yet. But I think that is something that is coming down the line in the future.
Yeah, nice, cool. I agree. And then Candace was asking, why was it important to add the email thread when using the AI response method? So just that final action step, add Gmail thread to box. If you could just clarify how that's supportive. Maybe if we show do you have any example boxes of the emails inside the box?
Yeah, I have the one I just created, and it's not necessarily super important. You don't have to do that because you're already having a box automatically created. And if I would have finished all of the AI response action steps for location, bean types, industry, lead source, all of that information would be populated within these columns. I've just found it to be handy if you also have that form in the box. So if you ever want to cross-reference information from the form to the columns that were actually filled out, you have that ability to. You can also reply to this form and then add the recipient or the contact that you want to reach out to. So everything is within one thread. So while it's not absolutely necessary, you're absolutely correct. It's just something that's kind of a nice to have, so that while you are already going to have the box or the email in your inbox, it's also going to be in the box in your streak pipeline.
Perfect. Well, great. I think Candace might still be typing. I'm not sure if she has any other follow-up questions, but I think we've covered a good amount of stuff in your time. So I feel like if anyone else has questions, they can follow up with us. Or Zach, is there anything else you want to close with?
I don't think so. Appreciate you all for showing up. I think we had a pretty great turnout. If there are any additional questions that you have, feel free to reach out to support@streak.com and look forward to having you in future Streak classes. Additionally, if there's any specific topics that you would like us to cover in future classes, feel free to reach out to our support team as well and let them know, because we're always looking for new ideas for classes that would best support you all.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Zach. We really appreciate it.
All right. Thank you guys. Have a good rest of your day.
Bye.